Yo, 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 what up, everybody? What up, everybody? This is episode, we have no idea, of the Fringe Podcast. We've been on a hiatus for a while. We did release our first new episode last week. We're going to consistently do this come hell or high water. It's about 0 degrees outside, but we're here. We are in the building. What up, what up, what up? It's about 0 degrees. It's so cold outside if you fart. The air turns into icicles between your cheeks. So it's chilly, but we're here. I got some good friends here. We're going to have a great conversation. The theme of today's episode is going to be starting over, man, starting over. Everybody, if you've been on this earth for long enough, you know what it's like to start over, to try to, maybe you changed schools a lot as a kid. Maybe you got a new job. Maybe you went to school. Maybe you dropped out of school. You know what I mean? We all, on some level or another, we know what it's like to start over. And so I've got some great friends around the table. I'll have them introduce themselves, and then I'm going to read a quote when we're done with this. Which way do you want to go? Let's go to my wife. Why don't you say what's up? It's been a while.
Hey everyone, it's great to be back on here. Looking forward to it. If we haven't met, I'm Sarah Davis, Patrick's wife.
You're more than just my wife, though.
I'm definitely more than just your wife.
Why don't you talk about the blog, your writing? Yeah.
Yeah,
Tweaky.
I'm a writer. I've been very inconsistent with it recently, just with working full-time in a field that's not writing related, social services, and life outside of that, mom life, keeping up with the home stuff, the church that we pastor. Yeah, just a lot going on. So definitely want to get back into a regular rhythm, though, of writing and putting out content.
Yes.
And finishing my book.
The world needs your words.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
I've been checking them out.
Thank you, Rob.
I've been seeing the post.
Thank you.
Next,
Somebody's
we got my
watching.
homeboy Rob in the building. Why don't you introduce yourself, brother?
My name is Robert Wolfram. I am a Hamilton, Ohio native, born and raised. I'm 36 years old, and I specialize in video, music, things like that. So I'm a tech guy, and I'm just happy to be here.
Absolutely. And then we got my homegirl, Sherry. What up?
Hi, I'm Sherry Miller. I guess this kind of rolls into what we're talking about. Just hearing that question, I think, who am I? Like, I used to have a clear definitions of who I am. I'm 46 years old. I am a mom, and I am a co-founder of Made to Love, which is a local nonprofit. We raise money to send kids in Haiti to school. And lately, that has kind of gone to the back burner because I've had to start over, and now I went back to school, and I'm an esthetician.
Yay.
Which I do lashes and brows and skincare, and that's really fun. So yeah, I'm trying to figure out when I introduce myself, what am I?
Yeah. We're all a lot of things.
Yeah.
Right? Why don't you talk a little bit more in detail, and we'll get to the topic here in a minute, because I think it's important for people to know what is life like for those kids in Haiti. Why did you guys start that nonprofit? What are the opportunities for those kids? What aren't the opportunities? And really the heart and the passion behind what you guys do, because I think it's amazing. And then, drop the website or the link.
Sure. So we noticed back in 2010 after the earthquake that kids in Haiti don't have a public school system, which seems inconceivable to us in America, that you can't just throw your kids on a bus and they go to school, and it might not be a great education wherever you live, but they can read and write, and Haitian kids don't have that. If you go to school, it's a private school, you pay for it. And with a typical family of 5-6 people, you can't afford $250 a year to send all of those kids to school. So they don't, they have to survive. And it was our mission to take some of that burden off of Haitian parents. We wanted to be able to send as many kids as we could to school, because we know that education can change the world. Historically, education, when someone learns to read and write, their life changes. It can't be stolen from them. It can't.
For sure.
All it does is enhance their lives. And once you live differently. And that is something that Haitian people have been robbed of. And so we wanted to relieve that bit of pressure from a Haitian parent. Because as parents, we know that we want the best for our kids. We want our kids to grow up differently than we did, have more than we did, know more than we know. And these parents don't have that. And I'm sure, and I can't speak for a Haitian parent, but I'm sure that that's very stressful for them. Not only can you not feed them the way you want to feed them, you can't house them the way you want to house them, but also you can't give them a future the way you want them to have, how you want them to live and raise their family. So given a child an education changes that entire family dynamic. Absolutely. And they can then support their parents and their family. So that's what we wanted to do, and we have done for the past 14 years, and it's progressively, we've sent more and more kids to school. In the last, I would say 4 or 5 years, it's been about 500 kids a year. So, and then that's changed. We need that
applause background. I'll throw that in. I love it.
Yeah, it's changed the way we do it. We used to do like a compassion kind of sponsor a child, and that got really difficult to manage from the U.S.
Yeah.
So we moved to a model where we build the school, we pay the teachers, we buy the books, and the kids go for free.
I realized you guys did all that too.
Yeah, wow. We do. And so it has really changed the way that that small community exists. I mean, the community now kind of exists around that school, and those buildings are not just used for education, they're used for community projects and just all kinds of different things. So, even if we were today to have to step away from what we do, we've still built a legacy that can make a big difference.
It's amazing. It's amazing. And what's the website people can check out and learn more about it?
It is made-to-love.org.
Nice.
And we tried to buy made-to-love.org. Just don't go into it.
Somebody has.
That's
the worst. Like
it got weird.
Yeah, I was going to say that can go a lot of different directions.
It went exactly where you think it went.
That's hilarious.
It did.
So hey, I was looking for this, and I found a child who needed my help. I wonder how many people that's happened to. That's amazing. I love that. God's got a sense of humor. You bring up something I think is powerful. There's this verse in this amazing book that I've devoted my life to. You might figure out what that is, but it says, "My people perish for lack of knowledge," right? And I grew up in abject poverty and grew up around a lot of people who didn't have education, and smart people, brilliant people, but it did limit them to what they were able to do. And I think that's amazing. I can't imagine the ripple effect of like generations of what you guys have done there. It's amazing. So today's theme, if you're tuning in for the first time, our theme for this episode is starting over. And I want to read this quote. I think it's a powerful quote. And it says this: "Don't be afraid to start over. This time you're not starting from scratch. You're starting from experience."
That's good.
Isn't that a little? I need a mic drop like sound effect. We got to find that.
Yeah, for sure.
A mic drop, boom. You're starting from experience, and all of us sitting at this table, we all have had different experiences starting over, and we just wanted to explore that conversation. I mean, there's so many places that I could go, and I'll pass it off here in a moment. But I think for me, even when I think about when I was a kid, because of the nature of us struggling financially, we moved all the time. Like I changed schools all the time. I would be like in this hood school in Cleveland, and then at some point I was in Colorado in the suburbs. It was so weird. And it's so awkward. Like even as a kid, when you go to school, if you're going from elementary to junior high, there's that awkward, there's new people and everybody's looking at me, and what do these people think of me? And so let's go around the table real quick, and we can make this part quick, and then we'll get to the deep stuff. Why don't you share a story of maybe when you were a kid, starting over a new situation, a new experience. It doesn't have to be intense or heavy, but yeah, and then we'll hop into the adult content. You want to start?
Trying to scan my brain for a situation when I was a kid of starting over. Go to someone else.
Anybody.
I'll go. So probably the biggest change or culture shock when I was a kid was moving from Hamilton to Fairfield.
Really? That close? Is it really that different?
Yeah, it is, right?
Yeah.
It's a complete culture shock, just going from, and being in 7th grade at that age where, you know, you're already changing, you know, you're hitting puberty, your body's changing, what you're interested in is changing, and then going from Hamilton to Fairfield and just being that one kid that's not from there,
like everybody else.
Yeah, and everybody's looking like, oh, he's from Hamilton. He's probably poor.
That's funny.
So yeah, but I adapted. You know.
Yeah.
I turned it into, you know, something positive.
For sure. You know, speaking of school, I can remember when I first moved from, I was getting in a lot of trouble, surprise, as a kid, and at one point I went to go live with my dad, who lived in a city called Wheat Ridge, Colorado. The name says it all, bro. Like Wheat Ridge, the mascot for the high school, it was a farmer. Like, I kid you not, like. Bro, how are you going to be intimidated when your football team comes out and the mascot is like, it's a farmer. Like, what are you going to do? You going to hit me with hay?
No outfit on, just the straw in his mouth.
That's what it was, too. I'll have to find that logo. I'm going to find that logo and I'll post it so you guys can see it online. But, so I grew up in the inner city, Cleveland, you know, grew up on, NWA, Bone Thugs, Tupac, Biggie, you know what I mean? All that type of stuff. And then I go to Wheat Ridge, Colorado, and it's just, there was literally no black people at all. Like, there was like 2 black people in the whole school. You know, they're all rocking out Nirvana, turn the light down, you know what I mean? And so, like, and I liked that. And I liked, these different bands, but it was so weird. And I remember, like, when I went into that new environment, how people judged me and thought I was being something that I wasn't. But that's really who I was. You get what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. But because they had never been where I had been, how about that? Oftentimes we judge people based on where they're at and who they are as people when we don't know where they've been, right? And so that was, authentically who I was. I liked that kind of music. I wasn't trying to be somebody that I wasn't. The fashion, right? It was like a different world. The fashion was different. I wasn't wearing, what were they wearing? The Jinko jeans and all that, we had the starter jackets, people were getting killed over them jackets and shoes, And but yeah, it was so weird, man. It was so weird. And I remember like getting into fights, because the girls would want to talk to me because I was different, Don't worry, Sarah. They got
like
nothing.
The bad boy.
They got nothing on
Bad
me.
boys.
I was a child. But it was so weird. You know what I mean? The culture, the music, everything about it. And it was strange. It was strange. What about you guys? Anybody else?
Well, I also changed schools several times around the middle school age. My dad is a pastor, and we moved from Charlotte, North Carolina, down to Fayetteville, North Carolina, which was big difference, a big change. And but it's not big enough to be like when you are in school, like in 6th grade, and you go and they're like, where are you from? Charlotte. And I'm like, it's not a big of a deal. You have to be somewhere exotic. Like if I was from a different state, maybe you're cool. But yeah, it was a big change. And then we changed schools several times in like 3 years. Dad wanted us to go to a Christian school, and that was weird. It was like a startup Christian school, and that was bad. And so we moved around a good bit, and then finally we moved to Virginia my 10th grade year. But yeah, it was difficult, and we changed a lot. And I noticed that my favorite thing, when I tell my daughter too, I was like, the coolest part about being the new girl is you're really cool and hot for like 3 months. So you really gotta
make it count.
You gotta work it for 3 months, otherwise you're out. Somebody else is coming in, and
that's hilarious.
That was the only good thing that I had.
Sure.
Yeah. I think the only thing I can think of from my childhood, and maybe that's a blessing because I know a lot of kids like don't have a lot of stability, growing up. But I think my earliest memory of what I would say like genuinely starting over, like I went to the same schools, never did move as a child, was always in the same place, would probably be teenage pregnancy and having my first son at 17. And just obviously like you're starting over in every decision you make no longer only affects you, it affects this other person that you love more than life. And that's my earliest memory that I can remember.
Yeah, that's interesting. So even though you're the same age as your peers, you're 17, your friends were 17, 18, there's an event that happens in your life that changes everything, right? And so for them, life is still going on, but for you, as you're processing these decisions, you have a whole different set of steps you got to think about. Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting. Yeah, when I think about, and I remember hearing this somewhere, a lot of times people want to guard their kids from change, right? Like, let's try to make it as stable as we can. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, you probably shouldn't move 15 times as a kid. Like, that's probably not a healthy thing. That's not really far-fetched, Shout out to all the military kids out there that you spent your life bouncing around. And it is hard, and I remember moving a lot. But there's also, and I remember reading about this study, there's a benefit to that, is as these kids grow up, and as people grow up that went through a lot of change, they're much more resilient and they're able to bounce back when change happens as an adult, right? And so there's actually a gift when it comes to starting over and changing. So if you're parenting, you just had a kid, don't hover too much, man. Sometimes you got to mix it up.
I feel like with that, it's just really any situation, though. It's just all about how you perceive. Like, you can look at it like it's a bad thing, or you can try to find the good in it.
For sure.
Because, I definitely moved around probably at least 12, 13 times during my school years. And like you said, it's made me resilient.
Sure. For sure. So we all have different stories. We've all had some pretty intense experiences as adults. I fit the description, but the rest of these guys don't. They're all dressed nice. And if most people were to come in here and look at us, maybe if I had a long sleeve shirt on, my neck wasn't tattooed, and they were to look at us, they would have no idea, right, that the stuff that all of us have gone through, experiences we've had, places we've been. And let's get a little deeper in this conversation, and let's talk about what was one of the most challenging times in your life. You don't have to pick Titanic, but why don't you share, or let's start the discussion on what was one of the biggest times that you had to start over as an adult. And I'll leave that up to you guys. You guys all have many. We have many sitting around this table. But I'll start, give you guys some time to marinate. I think for me, I would say it was for sure getting out of prison, for sure. And because, when I got arrested, I went in, I was one person, and I had this drastic life change, heart change while inside. But I had no idea, like, what does that mean for the real world, I lived my life a certain way up until that point. And I remember, like, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Shawshank Redemption with the old man, and the old man, like, spent his whole life in prison, and, like, he ends up, it's horrible, it's a horrible scene, but he ends up taking his life because he's so institutionalized. When he gets out, he can't process the world has changed so much. And I wouldn't say that, like, it was to that extreme extent, but I remember, like, all I ever knew to make money was doing illegal stuff. What does it look like to work a job? What does it look like to wake up in the morning and not sleep in because I was high the night before? You know what I mean? Just like basic stuff. I've always driven stolen cars. You know what I mean? Like, what does it look like to get your license? And I remember part of my release was I had to actually go back to Colorado instead of going back to Cleveland. And unfortunately, I had to go live with family who didn't want me there. They weren't really happy to see me. They even said at one point, I know this is just a front, you're just pretending, this is fake. I know you're going to just go back to whatever. And so here I am, I'm legitimately trying to change my life, trying to move in the right direction. And the first conversation literally the first conversation I have the day I got out was like, this is all fake, And so what do you do with that, right? What do you do with you're moving into a new season in life and all people see is the old you, right? And I had to make up in my mind, I get to choose who I'm going to be, and they can't determine it, And so I started doing strange stuff I never did. I started making money legally. I got on a bus. I rode to a job to sweep floors on a construction site, and it was weird. It was strange. It was lonely. It was like I'm working 40 hours to make this when in 10 minutes I did that. Like, what? You know, it was humbling. It was humbling starting over. But it was also beautiful because nobody knew, other than the people that I was living with, nobody knew like the old version of me. And so I was able to kind of reinvent myself. And so I ended up connecting with a childhood friend. I lived out there when I was young. Guy I used to get high with, and he had actually turned his life around, was singing music at a church, and got connected with them. But it was so weird. Like, and I remember like trying to live that life that I read about in the scriptures, you know, while I was locked up, and hitting a wall at one point and just really feeling like, man, I want to do this, but it's so hard to start over. Like I would be in a church filled with people and I would still feel alone, you know, and they were good people that were walking with me, encouraging me. But I just had this reoccurring thought in my mind, like, if you only knew who I really was, right, you wouldn't love me, you wouldn't accept me, you wouldn't want me here. If you really knew what I had done in my past, you know. But I just had to get over that. I had to get over that, and with the help of some good friends and God, I did. But it was weird, man. It was weird. And I'll pass after this. The place that I was locked up at, you didn't go outside. We were on lockdown for almost the last year. I was there. We hadn't gone outside for like 9 months. Like, didn't go outside for 9 months, and which is completely illegal. I mean, we were juveniles. It's completely illegal. And I remember, like, I had to ride in this van to go to the airport. It was so weird. Like, to go to the airport, my first experience being out after being stationary was getting on an airplane. It was so weird. It was so weird. But I'll tell you, there was something powerful about, like, when that plane took off, it was a spiritual experience. Like, no joke. I felt like I was, like, ascending out of this dungeon. You know what I mean? Like, I felt like Napoleon Dynamite. I should just been like, you know. But there was part of it that it was like, I'm finally able to leave, right? This stuff that has held me for 4.5 years, it's lost its power, right? And I think starting over it is about that. It's about the old life and the old regrets and the old whatever. In time, it starts to lose its power over you. And so I pass. That's my little story. There's many I can share, but that's mine. Next.
I'll piggyback on that just with a similar experience, because when I think about monumental events in my life of starting over, like, mine would definitely be like returning home after being incarcerated for 6 years. And I think, you know, there's this excitement, and like life kind of feels like a blank canvas at that point, because you have dreams of like what could be for the future. This horrible event is finally behind you, or so you think. But reality very quickly sets in with that, because there's so many barriers for someone returning home. You know, for me personally, I had gone through a divorce, so that was weird. Like, I left, I was married, had this home where I lived with my children. I come home, my ex-husband now has custody, so I'm the one with visitation, you know, and I remember dropping them off for the first time, like after visiting, and how strange that felt, you know. The financial, like when your life essentially is put on pause when you're incarcerated, but all of your debt is still waiting for you, you know, when you get back home. And so you have all these dreams of what life could be, but there's all these barriers as well that can be heavy and discouraging, and people get used to you being gone. And so relationships change, and people get divorced and get married and pass away, and sometimes you can't clearly remember all of those things because of the trauma as well. And so there's this social anxiety when you run into people, you know, out in public, or just of trying to remember details that you feel like you should remember. And yeah, it's a whole mix of things, but it was definitely a time of starting over, and so many hurdles and so many dreams and hopes as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why don't you speak to, and we've talked about this before, you know, you gotta You've got a great friend group that you've stayed in touch with. It's so weird. Like, I wonder what this feels like. I've never had this in my life. I'm just lightweight hating on you right now. But you got this friend group that you had when you were, I don't know, elementary age. You guys still link up. You have your little Friendsgiving and all this stuff. But, you know, and you've talked to them about this as well. You were gone for 6 years. And during that 6 years, their lives had moved on. They had had all these experiences, and they all were still growing in deeper connection and friendship with each other. And you lost that 6 years with them. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, why don't you speak about when you got home, trying to assimilate back into that, and how strange, like, even that was with people that you knew really, really well.
Yeah, I mean, it is strange because there's pictures that you aren't a part of, and things that took place that you may not remember because you weren't present for, and so it is very different. I think for me as well, though, because I had a baby at such a young age, that I wasn't, there's a lot of memories with them that I wasn't a part of because they were doing what normal 18, 20, 22-year-olds were doing, whereas I had a baby so young that I wasn't doing a lot of those things. So, yeah, it's just a different dynamic of closeness that they all have, that even though I'm part of the group as well, I don't have that close bond that some of them do, just because of gaps in history that I wasn't part of.
It's good. It's good. So how did you get through that? I mean, how have you? Obviously, I know I'm married to you, but for our viewers and those of you that are listening via podcast, how did you overcome that? Because most people going through that would be really discouraged and be like, man, like, screw it. You know, they would feel overwhelmed.
With the friendship or starting over?
Just all of it.
I mean, I think that being incarcerated, like, builds something in you that you might not have had before, of like resilience and survival, and your ability to endure immense suffering. You know, your capacity is definitely so enlarged. So yeah, I think like everything else kind of pales in comparison.
So good. To
the pain of that time.
No, I think that you said something powerful, that like going through that, and I know if I can, look, many of you listening to this, many of you watching from the comforts of your own bed, you know, we all have gone through some form of prison. You may not have physically been in prison, you may not have physically been addicted or had some traumatic, but we all have gone through some hard stuff. And I think that's so true when you realize that, man, if I can survive that, then there has to be a way forward. There has to be a way forward, you know, because if somebody would have told you probably when you were 16, 17, you know, you're gonna have these beautiful kids and get attached to them, and you're gonna go away for 6 years. Do you think you could handle that? You probably would have been like, bro, there's no way. There's no way. But there's a resilience that suffering and trauma that it brings. It does.
And I don't mean to minimize like the trauma of the prison experience, because it is traumatic. Yeah. Like it's not a walk in the park. I just mean like the memories aren't all bad when I think about my time there. Like there's actually some really good memories because of the people you meet and you know, get close to that you wouldn't have if you hadn't gone through that experience. But it's the pain of being separated from your family and having to rebuild your life, you know, the shame, the pain of what led you there. All of that is what makes it hard.
Yeah, so good. Thank you. That was powerful. Beautiful. What about you, Rob?
Well, like Sarah was talking about, prison builds that resilience, and you know, once you go through something like that, really everything else just seems like, oh, this is nothing, you know. And it's like the first time I got out of prison, it wasn't like a change for me. Like, yes, it was a change in my environment, but I went right back to the same thing I was doing.
Sure. When
I got released the first time, the second time, the third time, it's like I didn't change. You know, my biggest change was when I got out the fourth time and I had to learn how to live my life without drugs and alcohol. Yeah. That was the biggest change for me, learning how to, or really just living with the fact like, hey, I can never get high or drink again. Like if I want to survive, it just has to be. And it was hard. because as somebody who's been drinking and smoking every day for their whole life, to think like I can never go out and have a casual drink again, or I can never sit back and smoke some weed again.
Yeah.
Like, it's hard thinking like that. So, you know, I'm not really too big in NA or working steps like that, but the one thing that really stuck out to me about that program, and the one thing that I was able to take from it, was somebody said, you don't have to worry about never drinking again, you just can't drink today.
Yeah, that's good.
And like, I even get chills right now saying it, because like when I heard that, I was like, it put everything into perspective for me, and I'm like, oh yeah, I can do this, I got this. So
good.
I think you can apply that to anything in life, though. Mm-hmm. You know, it's like if you think about the future, like that can be so overwhelming. But if you think about just getting through this moment today, because it's all we have anyway, right? Yeah. The rest is an illusion of what we think we have. So yeah,
so good. Yeah, you might be listening to this and you think, man, I don't know how I'm going to get out of bed after what happened for the next week. Can you get out of bed today? That's powerful, man. You may feel like, hey, like I don't know if I can have it, you know, a will to live for the next year. Can you do it today? Mm-hmm. I think that's powerful. That's powerful. So good, man. So good. Thank you for sharing that. What about you, Sherry?
Gosh, I think about big moments, and of course I think about the Titanic in my life. But there were so many other times in my life that I've had to start over. I think about moving to Ohio from North Carolina.
That's a good one. Let's get on that cultural. Let's start with the cultural.
Yeah, people are like, Ohio's not that far north. Well, it is to North Carolina.
Yeah.
I mean, every single member of my family was like, oh, you're going to be a Yankee now. You're like, what? Yeah, and they even say, like, why do you talk like that now? I'm like, well, up here they think I have a Southern accent. I don't know. I can't think. But yeah, I remember I had met my ex-husband, and I was gonna move up here, and you know, I was starting over. I was a teacher in Virginia, and it was difficult. I love teaching. I love kids. I love youth and that kind of. But it was difficult, you know. These were inner city kids that I didn't necessarily relate to, and it was heartbreaking. Sure. And every single day, it was a group of 20 kids that broke my heart every single day. And I couldn't do anything. About it. And my contract was up, and I wanted to get married. And so I did. I moved to Ohio, and
why Ohio? Was that where he was from?
That's where he's from. Yeah. It was where he's from, and I thought, well, that's exotic. It's not. Spoiler alert.
There's so many memes about Ohio. Have you guys seen this online? Like, only in Ohio these things happen, you know?
It feels true. It feels true. And I'm not saying that Virginia, North Carolina, we live right on the border. My parents live in Virginia, which the state line is the city limits. Okay. So you can bounce back and forth. But, you know, I grew up in Charlotte. But yeah, I was starting over, and it was freeing for me, because I'm like, okay, I'm just going to be a whole new Sherry, and whatever that is, you know, and make new friends and being new again. Yeah. Because honestly, you know, moving around and changing, and I don't know if you guys can, it's almost like, you know, like you hit the trap door and you're like, I'm starting over, let's just do this again. I'm not really sure I like the edition that I'm in. I'm just going to start over.
For sure.
And I did, you know, I became, you know, a new role as a wife and a mom, and, you know, coming up with another career. You know, I was a church secretary. That did not work out for me. I'm not that. That wasn't my vibe. But yeah.
I can't imagine knowing you, I can't imagine a worse job for you.
Listen, I love to run my mouth.
To sit in an office in a cubicle.
You think that for 1 second that I didn't sit and talk to every single old lady that came in the door? I did. And I loved that part. Yeah. I just hated tithing records. And that was like, you know, and typing bulletins. That was not my spiritual gift. But yeah, coming up here, a culture change, learning a whole new role of being a wife, and a mom and being far away from my mom and my dad and my family and everybody who was on my team.
Yeah.
You know, I moved to a place where nobody knew me, and I didn't have any fans here.
Yeah.
You know, we're used to, your mom and dad, oh, I love you, you can do it, you know,
right.
and then you get up here and everybody's like, yeah, I don't really know if you can, to be honest with you.
Facts.
Yeah,
The Grace guys have
like
gotten
you.
to him.
Yeah, I don't know about you. You're kind of weird, and so that was a big change for me, which kind of builds to the Titanic. You know, when big things happen in your life and you do not have a team.
Yeah.
You don't have a team, and everybody that was on your team, I went through a divorce that was really, my entire team is gone. My family gone.
Sure.
So that was really hard, but yeah.
Yeah. A lot of us sitting at this table have gone through that same experience, and I think for me one of the hardest things of that experience was friend groups, and things get really weird really quick, and just like you spend your life, you had mentioned you had this life with the boys, you were married, you come home, you don't have a house, you don't have that. You're probably trying to, before you met me, of course, the moment you met me, the light just shined down from heaven, the glory of God rested on my head. But, you had this life as this person, and when all that stuff is taken out, when those friends are gone, when that group, that team is gone, you're left reeling like, who am I now? Right? Who am I now? Who is my tribe now? Who are my friends now? And oftentimes when you're in the beginning of that stuff, there's not a lot. And we're gonna tap dance on this at some point during this conversation. But the way that people who have been divorced are treated in churches, like, bro, you could have just got out of prison for a murder. You gave your life to Jesus. Oh man, welcome in. You want to be the elder? Oh, not you, divorcee. You go sit in the back. I don't even want to see you in my peripheral. You know what I mean?
I'm dating someone right now, and we went and visited this church, and we decided, okay, this is it. We're going to join here. And so there was an interview process, and they had these two little bags, with your little coffee cup or whatever in it. And the elder interviewing us goes, okay, we need to talk about this. I mean, we have two different last names. He was trying to say, are you living in sin? What are you doing here? And we were like, no. We're legit. We're loving God, and we're living separately, and we love each other, and all this stuff. And it was one of those really weird conversations. But then we get to the plug-in to the church part of the conversation. Where do we go? We don't have a demographic. There's this young married, and then there's the older married, and then there's the really old married, and then there's the women's group and the men's group. And then we're like, well, but we don't fit anywhere. And that's another, let's check the change box. It's we're used to being spouses. And so of course we're like, we can go to couples retreat. Oh yeah, we can't do that because we can't. Yeah.
Gosh.
It's a weird place to be because we're used to being a spouse. We're used to going, doing that, but there's different things. So yeah, we're really, in the church, we have a great church and we really enjoy it. But there are a lot of places we can't go. We can't be a part of.
So good. Yeah. What were you going to say?
Nothing.
Nothing. Is that where I insert the crickets? Because I've got crickets on here. So as you're starting over, you're trying to build these friend groups. I mean, let's just talk about that. Regardless of what our experience was, and we all have different experiences in starting over. Isn't it so hard, especially when you're not in high school or you're not in college? You're not surrounded by a bunch of your peers, people that are your age, and so it's so difficult to establish a new friend group. And you don't go to school and hang out with all these people, you know what I mean? And so like, how did you reconnect with people? What are some of the ways that you reconnected and you built a new I love what you said, a team, because I lost my team. How did you build a new team? And we'll just go, let's dance on that for a minute.
I think through daily life and the circles I was a part of, whether that was work or church, the coffee shop. I will say this though, I still don't feel like I have a best friend like I did before going to prison and while incarcerated. I have a lot of friends. I have a lot of people I can depend on. I could call them if something were going down. I know they would be there. I still lack that in my life. That's still a prayer of mine. But it's hard. It's hard when you're older. I've said many times, like, a lot of people that I would want a close relationship with, they already have like a super close best friend, or, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Yeah. Not that never mind. I'm not going to go into that, but I wouldn't describe myself as a super clingy, needy. If anything, I'm the opposite. But
if any best friends are watching,
right,
she's not clingy.
I have to chase her just for a hug. No, I'm just playing.
I feel like, especially me trying to completely change who I am, as far as like be a better person, or, you know, be a godly person, that pretty much like excludes everybody I know or everybody I grew up with. And it's like, even what you were talking about earlier, reinventing yourself, it's like after the drugs and alcohol, it's like I don't even know, like I thought I was an extrovert. You know, I think I'm an introvert because I really don't even like people that much now that it's like, so I really don't know who I am.
That's funny.
And as far as just like finding new friends, it's like you said, I don't really have, like, I have somebody I could say, yeah, that's been my best friend my whole life. But sure, as far as like speaking to somebody on a daily basis, I would have to say my significant other is my best friend, or like my daughter. I speak to her on a daily basis, but I really don't. Me and you don't even speak that much, and you're probably the person that I speak most consistently with. Yeah. And like, we probably only speak for, you know, 20, 30 minutes a week. So it's like, I've just kind of gotten rid of that idea of having a best friend, you know. And I have met some good guys here at church, and I've met some good people in the recovery scene, and that's what I just try to do, as far as like the men's retreats, or, you know, seeing people in church, shaking hand, get a little, you know, public display of affection. It's like, that's really it for me. Yeah. I sit in the house pretty much and like do my own thing, but I'm happy with that. So
yeah, that's good. What about you?
Reconnecting. I have not. I think going back to changing and moving schools a lot, I don't have a problem with that. Yeah. I must have a problem being alone. Honestly, I mean, that might not, I wouldn't say a problem, but I don't like it. I don't like having someone to, not having someone to feed back all the time. And I don't internally process, I externally process. So I need that in my life. And so I feel like when you have a need, you definitely search for, you know, something to satisfy that need. I do have a best friend that we've been best friends since we were 15. And that never changes, that never wavers. We are, you know, I know that she is a definite in my life. There's never a time where that even is like, you think maybe? No.
Do you guys talk every day?
We talk several times a week.
Okay.
We like to play the phone tag game. And of course, like most mature adults, we send each other memes a lot. Yeah. So
a lot of TikTok and going back and forth.
Yes. Well, she's not a TikToker, but we do send Instagram stuff back and forth. Yeah. So there is a constant communication in some way. Mm-hmm. In some way, I talk to my sister a lot. But I've noticed what I had to do is, you know, when my life changed recently, how do I find new people to connect with that don't know me as Sherry the wife, Sherry that's good, the event, you know, Sherry the whatever happened, you know, I don't like labels, so I don't do that. But I looked for a different way to connect with a different group of people. Where again, I could start over, and so I looked around Hamilton. Who could I connect with, And so I joined the junior league, which it's fun. It's a completely different group of people, but it's so fun to get to meet new people and.
Sure.
So that's what I did. I just, try to put myself in different places where I could find people and relate to them on my terms and my speed. I don't want to be besties at the beginning, but it's nice to have.
That's awkward.
Yeah.
And and people are like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
A little much.
You hand out friendship bracelets and people get weird.
Yeah.
I think too, like a big part of it, especially when you've gone through something hard and you're starting over, like at the beginning phase of that, you're guarded.
Absolutely.
Like you're guarded because, and maybe somebody didn't do something to you or it wasn't tragic, but you're going to a new city or you're starting a new job. You're guarded because it's not a familiar place, right? And I think for me, the way in which I've learned to connect with people is to let that guard down and to let myself be a little vulnerable with some people, right? To go into some environments and some situations and go around some people that normally I wouldn't think I would have much in common with. You talk about this, and why don't you share maybe one of those stories of one of those women that you really connected with in prison that you thought, like, there's no way I could ever be friends with this girl. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But because we assume because this was the friend group you had, this is who you were back there before whatever the event was that you're starting over, you assume your new friends are going to look just like your old friends, when oftentimes they don't. Mm-hmm. They're very different. And so why don't you maybe speak to that, because I think that's a really good example of that.
Yeah, I would say one of the greatest friendships of my life was definitely a gift I never saw coming. She was my roommate at Dayton Correctional, and I actually met her during the transfer from Marysville to Dayton Correctional. So there's a bus loaded with women. Oh my. Her and I were handcuffed in the seat next to each other. Now, mind you, this is the first time I've left Marysville since I was first admitted there. So I'd been there 3 years, had not been back towards home at all. So I'm just trying to being, I process things internally. Like there's always a dialogue going on. So I'm just trying to reflect, look out the window, notice things, take it all in. She's boxing my ears the entire ride with just questions and random conversation. And we get to Dayton Correctional and, we're finally off the bus, so relieved. And they make an announcement that whoever you were sitting with on the ride is who your new cellmate is. Oh and my. So, surprise, it's her. Total opposite of me, agnostic, so there's not that faith, common denominator. She honestly loved me better than a lot of Christians have in my life. And it just ended up being this beautiful gift of friendship. And she lives in Cincinnati now. She works a ton. And so I think life has just taken us in different directions. There's not, that time. We don't live together anymore. Yeah. So, but yeah,
she still
definitely.
Comes up to see
she does. Yeah.
She remembers your birthday.
She's been a couple times.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. She makes stuff for our kid, Yeah. She's shout out to Diana. That's Diana. I know a Diane. Shout out to Diana. We appreciate you. That's powerful. So as we wrap up this episode of the Fringe Podcast, if you could say something to somebody out there that's starting over, man, they're maybe they moved to a new city, maybe they're in a new relationship, a new job, and they're really having a hard time. They're really feeling that isolation. They're really feeling that loneliness. They're really feeling that, hey, I don't know how long I can do this. What would you say to somebody that's starting over? What would you share with them?
It won't always feel this way. Everything in life literally is temporary, and circumstances never remain the same. And whatever you're feeling today, could change tomorrow. It won't always feel this way. So hold on.
That's good.
I would say that this episode we have been speaking about how scary change is, and we've really been touching on the bad about it, but at the same time, change is really the most beautiful thing in life. So just hold on.
I agree, man. Change comes with it, like the diamond, the pressure and the not so great, but there are lots and lots of beauty in change. And I would say to anyone where it's in that pressure and change, that there is good to come, even though it seems impossible, because I feel like that's the part that even though it's temporary, anybody can say all the things to you, it's temporary, you'll get through this, you can do it, and it doesn't feel like that. It feels really, really big. And my ex-father, I don't like those exes, but he said to me, he was telling me a story about a general or some sort, and there was a ton of little bitty bonfires. And he was like, how are we going to put all these fires out? And one at a time. Mm-hmm. So, when things are really, really, really huge, I think to myself, I'm going to go to this fire and I'm going to put this fire out. And then I'm going to go to the next one and I'm going to put that one out. And I don't have to put out this forest fire at one time. I can just go to each thing and check it off. And that has really given me a little bit of a relief. Like you were saying, sobriety is 1 second at a time, 1 moment at a time. And, with me accomplishing and changing this laundry list of changing my life and getting my life back together, it was one little bitty task at a time, even if it was just changing the phone bill into my name. Like that was like a thing that was a huge thing, and I did it, and I was like, yes, I got the bill in my name, those kind of
little
things.
Yeah,
just little bitty accomplishments. You can make it, and one day the fires will be out, and it will be okay.
So good. For me, I would say I want to tell you a story. So when lobsters are growing, they grow inside of their exoskeleton, and what happens is the bigger they get, they start to feel the pressure of the shell that they're in. It's too small, and so what they have to do is they actually have to go find a safe rock to hide under to shed their exoskeleton to grow a new one. And I think that's what a lot of change is like. There's pressure, there's force involved, there's a part of it that's scary, right? You're vulnerable, and so just like this lobster, you're in a vulnerable place, and so they'll go under a rock and they'll shed that exoskeleton until the new one grows, and they don't come out until the new one grows. And there's this amazing verse in Scripture that says, Psalms 91, "He who dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty." You want to know how to get through change? You want to know how to start over, man? Like, I encourage you to invite the author of all things new, man, into that equation, because it's powerful when you have the shadow of the Almighty, man, protecting you, walking with you, affirming you, encouraging you, because all of us are changing. And for some of you watching this, some of you listening, you're not changing because something happened. You've just outgrown your surrounding, like that lobster. And there's a whole new world, and the world that you're living in, the friend group that you're in, the environment that you're in, you're feeling the pressure of it because you don't belong there anymore. May this be your word of encouragement to man, lean into that, and God wants to expand some things in your life, and it is scary, it's vulnerable, but man, invite the author of all things new into that. Invite him to guard you in that, because if you're not careful as you go through change, you can become bitter. You can hold on to the past. You can't reach out and touch what the future has when you're still holding on to the past. I shared this quote last episode, but it's so powerful. I think it's relevant to this conversation. When we think about moving on and the past shapes us, right? It's part of our story. It's a part of who we are. You should never forget your past. But moving forward and starting over, somebody put it this way, one of the ways that you move forward is you let go of all hopes for a better past. And I thought, like, bro, that is power. Like, the past is what it is. I'm letting go of all hopes for a better past, right? And I'm reaching out. I'm leaning into this vulnerable space. I'm finding that safe place with people, with God, and it's going to be better on the other side. If somebody would have told me when I was sitting in that efficiency when I first moved down here, that you would be in my life and we would have this beautiful life together. And it's been a ride, right? There's ups and downs. Like, I would have never believed him, but God had something way bigger than what, I had to lean into that secret place. And so, my homeboy, homegirl, those of you listening at home, thank you for joining us for another episode of the Fringe Podcast. We will see you soon. Grace and peace, grace and peace.
See ya.